Hey, welcome back. This is Veronica Tash. And what I want to go into some details about the killing of CEO Brian Thompson, which not just covering the news type thing. You should all be caught up with that all by now. I want to address more the issue of what is the context behind it? What is a little bit of theory behind it? Not deep theory, but what is the basic idea going on there? So we're gonna, I'm going to start out that before I did this, I made sure I checked deeply with the YouTube community guidelines to make sure I'm not overstepping my ground here. And basically, I'm free to say more than I want to say. Um, the only thing that would fall into play is inciting violence, but it'd have to be on a protected group, of which a CEO is not. So I could incite violence here, or not the legal definition, because legal definition would require that it is likely that such result would happen from my words. So no matter what I say here, I'm going to be well with them. I should not be getting in trouble with anybody. But with that said, let's do a little bit of a recap about what happened. Back on December 4th, Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, was shot to death by a hooded masked man who, was waiting for him. Not for very long, so he knew when he was coming. Took him out, and then fled quickly. And the cops ended up, well, let's slow down a little bit there. Thompson claimed when he was CEO, he took control in 2021. In that year, you had 17% claims denial. They shot up to over 32%, being the worst of the worst this year, that they are just denying claims left and right. The bullet said delay, deny, depose, which is supposedly wordplay on a novel, or not a novel, a book written about the care companies called Delay, Deny, Defend. So it does, did seem right from the beginning had something to do with what was with basically his actions as a healthcare executive. Um, I thought it was a mob hit. I thought maybe a mob's a Don's daughter died or something. But no, Luigi is not supposed to be a professional hitman. No criminal background history, but that's who they arrested, anyways. It's likely that he did it, but that's based off of just what I've seen coming through the mainstream media. Um, Anyways, he was arrested for the murder a few days later, based pretty much on him removing his mask when he was buying train tickets to flirt with the whoever that is at the desk there. I don't know if it's technically a cashier or they're called something else, but he went to go flirt. He showed his face, and that led to somebody catching him at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. So, anyways, you have a lot of the news media stressing that Thompson has a wife and kids and how horrible it is that he died. But to be quite frank, the man was a sociopath. Essentially, you go look at how many people are dying each year, which getting a adequate correct number at this point is hard to say. It was 45,000 back in 2009. But that's the latest number that I've seen. That came from the Harvard Gazette. Nobody seems to be doing studies on exactly how many people are dying from denied medical claims these days. But we can imagine it's still, in the tens of thousands at this point. That seems like a fair assumption, a conservative assumption. And you're looking at, what is it, 12 or 13% of the market share belongs to United Healthcare. That man is responsible for thousands of deaths, more or less. These he is this it would be manslaughter. It's not murder, um, but it would be very much manslaughter. People are dying because they're being denied necessary just to save some money by trying to drag things out by the insurance companies. They I got to deal with hives, stress-induced hives. Um, I was going to go get shots at the clinic every month is what they were going to do, and the doctor filled out the prescription. They gave me the epinephrine without a problem. That's, you stick yourself if you're having a reaction, and it prevents death. They cover that no problem. That wouldn't cover the shot that would cause the reason that I would need the epinephrine. Um, you know, just stupid things like that. And it's that's not a life threatening thing, but we're talking just about how stupid it is. I saw a great article that came out a while ago. It's some actual it is an actual article, actual, what would I call it? Scholarly article by William Bennett. And I love the title, and I want to just point that out. I'm not going to go through the article. Insurance denials of care amount to unlicensed medical practice. And I think that's a good way to look at things. But basically, we are looking at the murder, or not the murder. I'm not going to say murder. Murder means it's not murder if it's justified. And everything so far seems to be pointing to this was a justified killing by most likely Luigi Mangione. Could be somebody else. I don't know. But anyways, it was killing a man who's responsible for thousands of deaths through pure callousness, that he wanted to make money for his own advancement. And if other people died, if thousands of people died for his advancement, that was an okay price. That is extremely sociopathic. And Americans all around realize that. Just for comparison, Dylan Roof killed 9 black parishioners, I guess you would say, and wounded others after targeting a black church. He had a whole racist manifesto, was charged with murder, and he was given a death penalty sentence, so that's being appealed. When he was taken in, he was offered Wendy's by the cops. What do you want from Wendy's? Basically, we're give you one last good meal before you get taken in, and you spend the rest of your life in jail. Almost certainly spend the rest of his life in jail, unless he gets pardoned by some racist. Gedrin, which back in 2022 killed 10 black people in a supermarket. He had his own racist manifesto, charged with murder, also facing the death penalty. So that is not a unique thing, but Luigi Mangione, he's being charged with terrorism, murder, and also facing the death penalty. Notice that terrorism is what he's being offered. Also notice that the terrorism charge is absolutely ridiculous, because the definition of terrorism is violence in order to coerce civilians in general, not in individual civilian, but civilians in general, or the government to take a particular action. Even if you could say he's trying to do an action, it's not the government and it's not civilians in general that he's trying to coerce. So that's an easy fail, but it's important that it's there to scare people. It's a way of saying, no, this is not acceptable. We're not going to allow this. Then you have a woman called Brianna Boston. She was charged in Florida with a $100,000 bond for saying, delay, deny, depose, you people are next. That's an exact quote. It was considered, she was just denied on one of her an insurance claim. She was fighting with the insurance company at that time. And so that's what she said. She was charged with threats to conduct a mass shooting or terrorism. Now, mind you, the legal definition in Florida of that, of a threat, is expression of intention to inflict injury or damage. Notice those words. She said, you people are next. She didn't say, I am going to cause this to happen. At a very powerful populist movement at that time, it's a prediction. I'm sure it all amounts to us. There's no reason to suppose that she may be guilty of the charges. It's something that, is just ridiculous. But once again, they are very, very big on trying to scare us. I also want to point out Dylan Roof, he had prior criminal history. Peyton Gendron also had a prior criminal history. I'm not sure he was actually arrested for anything, but there's a lot of reports about him threatening to do a mass shooting prior while he was in high school. Luigi Mangione, no prior history. Brianna Boston, no history. Now, mind you, these right-wingers are racists. We're talking a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old, they got prior history. The 26-year-old and the 42-year-old, no prior history. Yet they're coming down harder on them for lesser crimes. We're talking about, even if you declared it murder, Luigi Mangione killed one person. If he's the one who's guilty. But he killed, there was death of one person, not 9 and 10. And whereas they could maximize the actual death, Luigi supposedly had writings where he was considering using a bomb, but opted not to and do the more dangerous for him route because he didn't want any innocents caught in the crossfire. Very, very different moral questions here. Now, they are what's important is they're prioritizing this man over innocence. This being Brian Thompson. He is more important than anyone else. The NYPD normally offers $3,500 for a tip. They immediately offer $10,000. That's like almost 3 times as much. 10,500 would be 3 times as much, but they're essentially offering 3 times as much. Somehow his life, the sociopath's life, who is guilty, obviously, of multiple mass manslaughter. His life is worth more than your average person. Then you have the FBI decided to throw in 50,000 out of nowhere. It's saying that they give out, sparingly, but they also decided his life was worth more than others. You didn't hear the FBI, giving out for you have these mass shootings in schools. FBI is not offering $50,000 for information on the perpetrator, or any of those types of crimes. But somehow, because this man was rich, his life is worth more than yours or mine. And this is very much the case where they are trying to make us afraid. And I also want to stress that them offering more does violate the U.S. Constitution, because we are all supposed to be afforded equal protection under the law. Obviously, CEOs, the rich, they're being offered more protection under the law. When the FBI offered that $50,000, that was unconstitutional. I can be straight up about that. I don't care what attorney's going to say this or that, because I really don't care about what case law says, because case law is just how we agree to fudge the reality. But when it comes down, and maybe there's no case law on this, but one way or another is very, very clear unequal treatment, unequal protection under the law. All this essentially is also stupid as hell by them. Why they would do this is really, really short-term thinking. And the reason why is because it stresses the multi-tier system the multi-tier society that we live in. For years, we had a lot of focus on difference between Black people and white people, or white people and other racial minorities, the differences in how justice treats them, which is by all means a very important issue. But this is drawing the focus that it's not just about that you do have a major class issue between somebody who's petit bourgeoisie like Brian Thompson and the rest of us. Somebody who may be bourgeoisie like Donald Trump or Elon Musk and the rest of us. Really makes it focus, and that's really adding fuel to the fire, because that is where this all came from. It's frustration about all of that. And so I want to focus a little bit on how that works in our society by pointing at two other cases. Number one, 2009, you have Robert Richards. He's a DuPont heir. He admitted to raping his own 3-year-old daughter. And because the judge decided he wouldn't do well in prison, and Beau Biden, cut him a deal. He only did probation. He got probation for incestuous rape of a 3-year-old. That is how fucked up our system is. You can look at Donald Trump. He got off on so many charges because of his money and his position in society. No one was considering that found guilty of felonies that carry prison time. Oh, he won't serve any actual time. Why not? How is that a just society where Donald Trump gets to commit massive fraud and walk? Where we look at these giant corporations who will essentially, if they were people, they'd be guilty of murder or manslaughter on the regular. Employees die and all that, customers die, and they get a small fine that's the price of doing business, because they made more money by doing it wrong, versus the chance that they get caught than to actually do it right. We give them these little slaps on the wrist. Two multi-tiered system, because it's not two-tiered. It's not just the rich and the poor. The difference between the white poor and the black poor, and the rich whites and rich black people. All that, a little bit different between it all. So it is multi-tiered, but it's very much an unequal system, and that is what's drawing attention to. More about Trump. Of the many crimes that he could be charged for successfully, one of them actually is treason, and I argued against this at first, and I've definitely argued when people were first saying Trump's guilty of treason because he's friendly with Russia. That's not treason. Russia has not been our enemy ever. We've never been, because when the law says our enemy, they mean someone we're at war with. And we've never been at war with Russia, whether we should have or not. We've never been at war with Russia. And that very much goes back to, God, I can't remember their names offhand. The two scientists who gave the Soviet Union nuclear technology. Is it Rosenfeld, maybe? Or Rosenberg? Or it's definitely a Jewish couple, but they were found guilty of espionage. Court expressly said it was not treason. They were cleared of treason because we are not at war with Russia. So no, that wasn't it. However, Trump did aid and abet the enemy, and it wasn't Russia. You're talking about the January 6th insurrectionists, people like Ashley Babbitt. God burn her soul. But when they did that, when they were trying to overthrow the election results through force there, they were at war with the United States. And Donald Trump sat there and he gave them aid and comfort by failing to act. By when they were coming into the rally originally, saying, I don't care that they have guns, they're not here to hurt me. Which really tells you he knew what they were planning. But one way or another, he held back everything, which is aiding and comforting the enemy. Enemy being the insurrectionists who were actively at war with the United States at that moment. And so that was treason. He just walked free from it. Why? Because of his wealth and his position. It is unthinkable that he walked free from that. Now, you're looking at pundits of both major parties have been condemning it. You saw where, of course, you have your liberal bullshit, neoliberals talking about how horrible it was and getting put in their place by listeners. Ben Shapiro, probably not his followers who turned after him, but got pretty much put in place by trolls one way or another. But more Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh does seem that was his actual listeners sitting there who were telling him on the right wing, no, you don't understand this guy. Brian Thompson was a piece of shit. He really was these are horrible things that happen to people because of people like him. That he is part of the lead that even the right wingers realize are part of the problem. They don't seem to realize that Donald Trump likes them, because Donald Trump's response was making a hero of Luigi Mangione. He called it sickening. He called you sick. Because we know that your chances are basically, if you are aware of what's going on and you're not super freaking rich, yeah, you're happy that Brian Thompson got his. It's what was morally, karmically right with the universe that he deserved his fate. It was very much a justified killing. And we realize that on the right and the left, the big difference is top and bottom. People in power opposed it, people at the bottom didn't. Um, you have people like even as far as Bernie Sanders. He has some power in the system. He's on the left, but or yeah, he's not really on the left. He's right there at the center, a little bit right of center. But in the American um, Overton window, he's far on the left in that Overton window. Overton window's the range of acceptable views in society, and he's on the very far left side of that. But he called it an atrocity, which he's incorrect there. He's probably doing that to save face. Me, what am I worried about? They're gonna they're gonna demonetize this. I'm already not monetized. I've negative income dealing with YouTube. I've spent money. I have not made a dime from it. So I'm not worried about that. Like Bernie might be worried about, his career there, whatnot. Because it wasn't a trust, but even as far left is there, both sides. You're looking at atrocity. You have a big issue. I'm turning notes. I took a little bit of notes. So I'm not rambling too much here. Big talk is that political violence is never acceptable. And by all means, in general, political violence isn't acceptable. It's rarely acceptable. There are certain cases where it is. For example, think about the Warsaw Uprising. Warsaw Ghetto, World War II, bunch of Jews trapped in there, probably unaware that they were going to actually be murdered, but they're put in pretty harsh situation. Gaza, prior to all the current war, or not current war, same war since 1967, prior to the current offensive, let's say that, that was equivalent to the Warsaw Ghetto. You have a whole bunch of people walled in with insufficient resources and all that. And they rose up, and it was very good that they did. There's nothing wrong. They had no obligation to sit there and be. Even Thomas Hobbes would say you have every right to oppose the sovereign if the sovereign's trying to kill you. Now that doesn't apply to someone like me. If King's trying to kill you, doesn't matter. I still obligated to try to kill you too. But you have the right to oppose the king in that situation, or whoever the sovereign is, because sovereign could be an aristocracy or a democracy as well. It could be any of those. But this you have the right to defend yourself against that. So yeah, they have the right to, and in a way, you're looking at the same situation here. It's not imminent, direct death in either case to the participants' knowledge, because the people in the Warsaw Ghetto didn't know about the death camps that were coming. I'm not sure if the death camps existed before or after that, the uprising itself. But one way or another, they wouldn't have been aware of what was awaiting them. And, same situation. We have this collective right to defend ourselves from being essentially left to die by insurance companies committing fraud by denying claims they have no right to deny. Um, and when we are, looking at that, there are certain circumstances where it becomes acceptable. And to get some guidance on there, we're going to look to Martin Luther King Jr. Because Martin had a wonderful line about how the riot is a language of the unheard. When you do not have a means of actually being able to express yourself, to be heard, to be able to affect change in some way, when it is vital, that's when people stop being civil. Now, Martin said, a riot. This is another case of the same thing. This is the language of the unheard. Now, Luigi apparently came from a fairly well-to-do or very well-to-do family out in Maryland. But his mindset wasn't there for sure. And he's definitely seems to be part of the American people as a whole. He wasn't so well-to-do that he is on the level of someone um, like Brian Thompson or Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. That's not where he was. He's still part of the rest of us. My understanding is probably working as a, doing something working class, since. His family didn't see him for months, about 6 months prior, 5, 6 months. So he did something to survive, and my guess is, he actually did work. I don't know that for a fact, though. But one way or another, he's still subject to insurance companies. And I've seen even a lot of businesses throw out on YouTube, smaller businesses throw out alibis for Luigi, because even the smaller bourgeoisie, which are not the petite bourgeoisie, but the one these companies where you would call them small businesses, but really more mom and pop type shop. Yeah, they see the same thing, and they're sick of it, and they are willing to stand on the same side as the rest of us. But that because there was no valid path for change, that's what led to this sort of reaction. That's what justifies this sort of reaction. Now, if it were the case where he was someone like Dylan Roof or Kyle Rittenhouse, where you're asking for something horrible, you have all the power in the world in your position to try to make this change. Political violence is not justified there. This is something that is justified in the case of the powerless. They're powerless because they are left without power within the system. Not unilateral power, but their share of power. They don't have that. I don't have that. You probably don't have your share of power in the system. And a lot of that comes down to the fact that we have a system that's rigged for sociopathic killers like Brian Thompson. The United States, the United States does not give you that kind of path on these issues. Republicans back the healthcare companies. The Democrats back the healthcare companies. Even where you have some like AOC or Bernie, they are marginalized within the Democratic Party as a first priority. Trust me, Biden did not run in 2020 because he wanted to beat Trump. He ran because he wanted to beat Bernie. That was the issue. And if you try to vote for third party, everyone loses their shit. And there's strong systemic bias against that. There is no valid, sensible, reasonable path for trying to say, hey, you're not going to kill us all. That's not there because we're left powerless in this. We're up left to the winds of the oligarchs. So when you have the system that's completely rigged for people like this, people are going to find their own path, and that's what Luigi Mangione did. If he is the person who did it, which seems like he most likely did, but I don't want to say that he did it without him saying he did it or him being found to have done it. Because I'm not privy to whatever defense he has. This political violence is a function of our broken political system. This is when people are marginalized to the point that they are worried about their life. You have political violence like this normally. And when that does happen, it is justified because of that marginalization, because stressing. They have that, it's justified because they had no valid. There is no kind and civil path. You cannot meaningfully change anything in society, even when you're in the majority. And for that, I point to Gillens and Page in 2014. Once again, I bring them up, it seems, every time I do something. And they did this paper, and they found we don't have a naked oligarchy. It's very much clothed in the pageantry of democracy. No actual power to the people. When the people disagree with the super rich, with the corporations, they lose 99% of the time. They get what they want only when they happen to agree with the super rich. But we still had this illusion that we have democracy. Even this past election, people were still thinking we have democracy in America. No, we don't. I'm not sure we ever had democracy, but we sure as hell haven't had it recently. Gillens and Page covered back to 1980. Is it 80 or 81? But they cover way back there. You could go back further than that. You know how we were founded. This is not a democracy. It's been an oligarchy. It's just been one that's been very careful to create the illusion that it is a democracy because there is a sense of legitimacy in that. If we think that we have the power, then we don't actually take the power in our own hands. But it's been more and more blatant as time goes on. Right now, we're looking at a case where it seems that Donald Trump, even though he was somehow once again elected president, at this point, they should have voted. So, the Electoral College would have elected Donald Trump as the next president of the United States. But he's not going to be the one who's in power because Elon Musk, who originally immigrated here illegally, despite being super big on illegal immigrants, he world's richest man seems to be calling the shots. He made a little he basically has Trump by the balls, and Trump's going to do what Elon Musk tells him to do. So we have a very scantily clad oligarchy right now. It's not quite the naked oligarchy. They're not straight up saying, hey, you have no power. but is very hard not to see that we have just an oligarchy at this point. It's not democratic. As I've constantly tried to stress over these, democracy is about when the people have the power. And when the people have the power, the state administers in their interest. Tell me, if we are the one industrialized country in the world where you have no guarantee of health care, where you're worried about insurance companies approving or denying your claims, where these non uh, non-educated bureaucrats are overruling the doctors who went to school for years, specializing, going through grueling studies to become specialists in human health. They're overruling the doctors and saying, no, this isn't medically necessary. Why? Because they just don't feel like paying for it, because different companies think that different things are medically necessary. So obviously, it's not, matter of the doctors just doing the wrong thing. It's a matter of these companies deciding they just don't want to pay it. That's how they make their profit. Where do you think the profit comes from? It's from you paying more than you receive back in services. It costs them less than it costs to give to us. And basically, we're doing some sort of reverse gamble where just in case I happen to lose, I have this, and we pay for it. It's cheaper with better results when it's done through single payer or nationalized healthcare, but we don't have that, and we have no valid path to get it because we have two major parties where the system is rigged, and it's near impossible to wake up enough people at once to say, hey, we're going to go vote another way. Because realistically, if you actually vote the way, however you vote, you're going to get what you want. If you could elect anybody who is eligible to be president as president if we all got aboard and said so. The system still is technically there, but they have the way of keeping you from doing that. No, there's going to be these ballot access laws because after years and years and years of elections where it didn't pose any problem, they decided it would be too expensive to have everyone on the ballot. So we have to make sure only the people who are really, really going to, are really, really going to make it, namely the Democrats and Republicans, they're the ones who get on the party or on the ballot. We have media that will not cover anything, the third party, and they're constantly framing the people. You have these two choices. You have these two choices. Then you have influencers. You have your Vaush. You have the Humanist Report. You have your Kyle Kulinskis and everyone else here on YouTube. These Democratic operatives who just say, "Oh, you have to vote for Biden. It doesn't matter that he sucks." We'll talk about how he sucks, but we're still going to say there's no other way. They're hurting everyone in. And there's never enough to actually make a difference because we're not willing to stand up. There is no line that can be crossed. The Democrats adopted a fascist border policy. They decided they want to work closer with the fascists. They decided to throw trans people under the bus and say, we're not going to support them anymore. And still, you have those three I mentioned all back in the Democratic Party as the only choice. They refuse to look outside the box, and they refuse to let you look outside the box. And I don't think they're bought. I think they're just not thinking at all long term. They're thinking very short term. What's going to help me right now? But sometimes doing what's going to help you in the short term over and over and over again is going to screw you big time in the long term. if we had gone and made this movement to push a third party back in, say, 2000, we could have been done and over and we wouldn't have faced anything worse than we actually did. But that's not what happened. And so what we're you know we look at the system, it's just not there. Just not there. There's no valid path forward that the system actually allows people. And so, not seeing any other way, you have political violence, which brings me to more about Donald Trump. Donald Trump doesn't realize that the wave of populism that he rode to power twice now has nothing to do with him. It has nothing to do with his policies themselves. It's not that people like his policies. They never voted for him because they like him. They vote for him because they hate the status quo. They hate neoliberalism and neoconservatism. They hate that idealized exploitation of themselves. You look at, I feel like coming down with something here. But when you look at it, the Republican Party is just gone apeshit, trying to do whatever crazy, messed up thing that they can. And the Democratic Party exists just to prevent anything from moving to the left. That's their whole purpose. They work hard to stop it. They try to keep anybody who is left of the establishment down. It's really the Republican Party is the party of ruthless capitalism. We're going to do what we want, and there's nothing you can do to stop us. You're all little peasants. And the Democratic Party is the sensible. We got to keep them all calm and make sure they have just enough that they don't revolt, type thing. Donald Trump saying, "Fuck that. We're gonna screw things over more. We're gonna raise their taxes. We're gonna give a bunch of tax cuts to the poor. We're gonna raise Social Security and slash the government." The government budgets, make sure that there's poison, that there's poisons once again in the food that people eat because they can't afford, or because there's no one actually checking to make sure that companies are following the rules. Just sink everything. And he thinks that he's going to be okay. His buddies are going to be okay when that happens. No, not at all. People who don't understand what's happening are rallying behind him because they just don't like the status quo. And ultimately, if he goes and does all the crooked shit he intends to do, the end result is that people are going to get pissed off. And I'm talking very specifically his followers. These people who are diehard going to these MAGA rallies and all that, they're the ones that are going to come for him. Specifically for him, if he gets hit, I see it being by somebody who is a MAGA supporter who just got disillusioned. Like, how dare you? I was supporting you. You said you're going to cut food prices, bring us back, give me a job again. None of that happened. But instead, you took away my grandma's Social Security check. It got slashed, and so she starved to death, or whatever the hell may have happened. Some story like that's going to play out where he goes. But in the meantime, other people, your Mark Zuckerbergs, your Jeff Bezos, your Elon Musks, other CEOs of different companies, they're going to be prime targets as people decide, fuck this. I know I can't take on the U.S. Army, but I can take on some guy who puts barbecue sauce on his bookshelf because he thinks that's a human thing to do. That's what's going to happen. This is just by the numbers. I'm not saying I'm doing anything to make that happen. My video here is not going to affect that happening. Hell, I only think I have 38 people who follow me. But you're looking at just, you're creating the situations where when you have 300 million people, somebody's going to be doing something. It's just the nature of human society. And it's very important to realize that when this happens, this is a pro-social thing that they're doing. This is something that's normal. I mean, you go back to the fact we're primates. What's one of the big things that primates do? Counter dominance. If somebody starts being a big asshole, what do? They gang up on them and say, no, you're not going to do that. We're going to put you back in your place. That is something that all primates do. And we're more social than the other primates. We're going to go a little bit further. You're going to have people. And by all means, I do want to stress, you probably do not want to be the person who does that, because, Luigi may be the first if he's the one who actually did it. But he's probably going to pay for it with his life. I mean, I thought the same thing he did, but I don't have the bravery, or I value my life too much that I'm not going to do the same thing that he did. And that's saying that if you're thinking about it, I would suggest you think about it hard, unless you have some terminal illness that still allows you to be active, and you got like a month to live or something, or something extreme like that. You probably don't want to be the person who does that, because the results are going to be pretty bad. But it is a big pro-social thing. That is, Luigi Mangione put his own well-being, or he put our well-being above his own. He decided he was going to be that. And there's a big thing with humans. We have something called third-party punishment. Second-party punishment is, you do something wrong to me, I'm gonna take it out on you. I'm gonna do something spiteful. I'll ruin your stuff. I will refuse to work with you in the future. Something like that. That is second-party punishment. You see it in chimps. Third-party punishment, I see you doing something wrong to somebody else, and I'm going to take it out on you. And that's what Luigi did. He saw, here's this big guy. He's killing thousands of people, probably thousands each year, out of pure greed. That, I'm going to go and I'm going to punish him. And I'm going to go, despite having this, coming from this wealthy family, I'm going to take him out for the little guy. That is a hero. That is a hero. Luigi Mangione, if he's the person who did it, is a hero. And that brings us to, now, of course, Republicans, if they're smart, don't carry through that crazy pipe dream stuff that you wanted to do, Project 2025 and all that, because it's going to kick you in the ass. You're going to become targets. And I'm not the one making you a target. You're making yourself a target, where somebody out there is going to say, well, I can see who's doing this, and this is unacceptable. So that it'd be really stupid for you guys to do that. But I'm planning on you to do something stupid. That's just what Republicans do. Some of the stupidest people became elected officials for the Republicans. Look at Lauren Boebert. Now, I understand some people need, they struggle. They may find it hard to get a GED and all that. But I'll guarantee if you're struggling to get a GED, you should not be in charge of the country. You do not want someone like Lone Boebert having an elected office. She's not qualified. She doesn't know how to make anything actually happen because she's an idiot. It doesn't that doesn't make her a bad person. What she's done in office makes her a bad person, but you don't put people who are that unintelligent in an office like that. Um, so they're probably going to do something really stupid, and they're going to endanger the oligarchs. They're going to endanger themselves because they don't know how things work in the real world. They just live on myths. But the big thing to end this on, what we really need to do, if you live in that whatever district of New York that Luigi's going to be tried in, or in that wherever Lakeland, Florida, however they do their courts there, um, for Brianna Boston, uh, spread the word about jury nullification. If you got a bunch of money and you want to do something good, buy a billboard in that area telling people about jury nullification. You may not know what jury nullification is. It is something that comes, I believe it's from the Quakers originally. But the community has a right when they're on the jury to say, no, we don't want to enforce the law here. We're going to nullify the law. So they can sit there and they can say, okay, I looked at everything. I see it. Luigi Mangione, he did it. He killed Brian Thompson, but I'm voting not guilty anyways. Even though I know I'm 100% convinced that he's the one who did it. Why? Because jury nullification allows for that. It is something where the community is saying, "Hey, we don't want to. He did a good thing. We're behind it." And so it's acceptable. It's justified what he did. And I'm sure an attorney's going to explain it a lot better than I am, but that's the idea behind it. There's also a great paper by Paul Butler. I disagree only with one part of it, and that it only obligates Black people. But he suggested, based on the fact that you have discrimination, disparity in how much Black people are policed compared to white people, how much uh, likely they are to be arrested than white people, then to be sentenced or found guilty, sentenced, and so on, penalties and all that. That if you have somebody with a nonviolent crime that did not try to steal from his neighbors or whatnot, it's acceptable if you try to do some property damage or steal from a big corporation, but from your, as long as you didn't try to steal from your neighbors, rob their house or whatnot, you got caught with, weed or whatever the case may be, you have this race-based jury nullification. You let them go because it's still not going to make everything equal. But when people do it enough, it brings it more equal, or at least as often as he thought it would be used. And it's a great paper. But jury nullification is something that we need to get the word out about and make sure people know how it works, because judges hate it. They try to make sure you don't use it. I remember the one time I did get called for jury duty, that except for the time that they canceled it because of COVID, before I could go there. But I was sitting in there for jury selection. I did not get to actually get interviewed for it. But they went through and they said, they were asking these people, will you be willing to decide this case using the criteria I give you to decide it? And that's their way of saying you're not going to use, jury nullification. And that's one thing the judge was looking for, which I think is should be a mistrial at that point, because the jury has a right to do that, and you cannot just screen out people because they may do that. That is obviously a miscarriage of justice. But in the case of Luigi Mangione, that would be a good time to use jury nullification. And we need to get the word out about that. Yeah, so once again, I do not suggest that you follow directly in his shoes, especially not yet. There's going to be a whole lot of stuff probably coming our way. But ultimately, it was justified. He is a hero. He killed a villain. And that is something we really need to stress. This was not a good man. When you look at people who get to these top tiers, they tend to be some of the shittiest people around. Sociopaths rise to the top in societies. And because they don't care, they can manipulate. If I try to manipulate somebody, I'm going to feel ashamed. I'm going to feel bad about it. Sociopath does not feel bad about it. And so it's a completely different situation. It's how they're able to rise to the top. They can say whatever and they don't care. They just know it's what they need to do. They don't necessarily mean evil, but they lack these social emotions that really make us human. That is like the defining feature of humanity is these social emotions that they lack. And they rise to the top, and they will, in a system like this especially, they will try to abuse their power. Now, in any other system, if you don't have a pure democracy, or if you have that, so if you have socialism, but it's got still some sort of power structure, where you have people who are appointed as managers or who have higher level political office, you're going to still see sociopaths tend to rise to the top, but they do so much more work, bad in under capitalism than they would elsewhere because there's less power against them under capitalism, less consequences. So that's really where you want to focus, and it's out what is antisocial and what's pro-social, and we have to remember that it is not a good idea for political violence to be rampant. It should not be generally out there. That's not the way that you want to handle disagreements. That's why you have systems where you work things out. But it comes down when you offer a valid path for somebody to feasibly create change, especially an important, good change that you run into, that you're going to see political violence be justified, and people are going to do that because they have no other option other than letting something worse happen. And like it's once again, it's not that you get your way all the time, that you're always going to get your way, because that's obviously not something that can happen. But you need to have that reasonable ability that it could happen if you're able to convince people on an even playing field. And we do not have anywhere near an even playing field. It's so even they're able to gaslight us into thinking that it's even when it isn't. When you really look at it, this is why so many people who are educated lean left, because they actually can see how everything is shifted in the favor of the haves and against the have-nots. And propaganda doesn't work as well on them. It's not that it doesn't work. You don't become God knows there's a bunch of educated people who are stupidly clinging to Democratic Party rhetoric and nonsense. But keep keep in mind what's pro-social, what's antisocial, and really think about it. Everything I said. Make sure that you are thinking critically about what I said. Watch it, think critically, and question things that you agreed with. Should you be agreeing with me? Things that you didn't agree with. Um, should you be disagreeing with me there? Think critically. Don't just listen to me or anyone else. Um, thank you, and have a good night. And happy holidays to all who are there.